The moment the laugh track hit, a silent pact was made. We all agreed to ignore the casual cruelty lurking beneath the shag carpet and the wood-paneled sets. A sexist gag landed. The studio cheered and my living room joined in. I didn't blink until years later. 3 channels, rabbit ears wrapped in foil. TV trays balanced on knees. This glowing box raised us between meatloaf and math homework. 7 ugly truths. Hilarious then. Wince-worthy now, and why we kept tuning in anyway. To understand why the canned laughter felt real, we have to sit back down on that shag carpet in front of the set. Our first ugly truth was that casual sexism was a running gag. You ever notice how the kitchen was always the battlefield and the punchline, the thing is? Those shows taught us the rhythm before we even knew the words. Wives nagged, husbands rolled their eyes, and every argument ended with a smirk and a peck. It felt harmless in the beam of that living room glow, but the repetition did the work. Night after night, the joke made the shape of what love and work were supposed to look like. Here's how it played. The blonde walks in, the room gets dumber, the boss leans in. The camera tilts to the calendar pinned behind the secretary's desk, the one with the swimsuit smile and the car that had more curves than the plot. A wolf whistle on the soundtrack, the audience roars on cue, and we all learn which direction to look. The humor had a recipe: setup, insult, denial, bigger insult, makeup kiss, reset. The writers didn't invent it, they just ran it like a factory. My mother would chuckle, then sigh and go back to folding towels. My father would shrug like a union man clocking out. It's TV, don't overthink it. Household detente. The peace lived in the space between their reactions, and I sat on the floor, breathing in dust and heat from the back of the set, learning that a woman's frustration was funnier than a man's apology. Get this, they even made ambition into a punchline. A woman wants a promotion? Cue the honey, who's going to make dinner? Man forgets the anniversary, cue the laugh track, the sheepish grin, the last-minute flowers, and the door closing on the apology we never heard. In that rhythm, we learned to measure offense by its comedic value. At school, the cadence slid into our voices. Don't be such a nag, a boy would say, and it landed like a line reading. On the playground, we did bits: the bumbling husband, the long-suffering wife, the sultry secretary. It was play acting, sure, but it was practice too, and practice sticks. Meanwhile, those offices on screen ran on the same joke. The handsy boss gets a laugh every time he leans too close. It's the situation we're supposed to accept because the situation is the show. The women carried trays and expectation. The men carried clipboards and freedom. You could feel the floorboards sag with it. For all that, there were sparks of resistance tucked in. A sharp female lead would sneak a truth past the censors, one line clean as a razor. She'd call out a boss's compliment with a side eye that told a different story than the script dared. Those moments felt like someone cracking a window in a smoky room. You'd inhale and think, now that's oxygen. But the main dish was still the gag, a quick micro story, the camera pans, and there's that grinning secretary calendar again, a prop that never blinked. My mother glanced at it, then at me. Not nice, she said under her breath. The laugh track swallowed the words, but they landed anyway. Another night, the soundtrack coughs out a wolf whistle as a character bends to pick up papers. My father barks a laugh and shakes his head the way men shake off rain. It's a joke, he says, like that settles it. And yet, some shows tried to tilt the angle. They'd give a woman the last joke of the scene or the first word of the fight. The audience would clap, the music sting would swell, and you could sense an alternate version of the decade flicker to life. When she walked out of the room on her own timing, it cracked the reset button. The following week, though, the factory rhythm returned. Syndication loves a loop. Here's where it gets tricky. The jokes weren't just on TV, they moved into the office. I remember years later, a manager calling a coworker kiddo and praising her smile while asking for a report. He thought he was being charming. He was quoting a script he didn't know he'd memorized. I heard the phantom laugh track and the silence that followed. And at home, I watched the detente strain. My mother started answering the TV back. She's not nagging, she's asking. It wasn't a lecture. It was a correction, soft but steady, like tapping a picture frame until it hangs straight. The shows kept leaning, but our living room tilted less with them. You have to understand the economy of prime time. Jokes at women's expense were cheap, portable, and tested. They worked across households and markets. You could hear the conveyor belt humming. And because the jokes resolved everything, they taught us resolution as theater. Punchline, hug, credits. Feel better now, good. Don't ask what happens tomorrow. Still, I can't pretend there wasn't warmth in there, too. That's the trap. A sweet moment between characters made the sour notes easier to swallow. A dad teaches a daughter to drive, a couple dances in the kitchen, then the old pattern slides back in, easy as muscle memory. You forgive it because you miss the sweetness. One more micro story. I saw a sitcom office recycling bin full of babe jokes, then a scene where the woman gets the last laugh and the promotion. My dad chuckled, surprised. About time, he said. It wasn't a revolution, but it was a hinge. But the jokes weren't the only thing canned, so were our reactions. The second ugly truth was that laughing tracks trained us what to feel. Here's the part that still echoes in my head. The machine told us when to laugh, and we obeyed. Not because we were weak, but because rhythm is contagious. That warm burst of laughter didn't come from the couch next door. It came from a box, and we let it into the family. The stakes were inside our bones. You sit there, a kid on the carpet, learning language by timing. A line lands, nothing really happens, and then whoosh, waves of canned laughter roll over the quiet like surf. You didn't think, is this funny? You thought, I'm late, better catch up. It trained us to hit the mark. Now, watch the choreography. A joke limps, but the track rescues it with a bright bark and a rinse of applause. The actors hold for the invisible room. The scene breathes to make space for laughter that isn't there. Suddenly you're tapping the beat on your knee. You laugh along just to feel in step with the show. It wasn't persuasion, it was metronome. I remember chasing it, half a second behind, mimicking joy like a kid chasing fireflies. When I finally caught it, the next laugh was already on the run. That's the trick. You're always a half breath behind the machine. So you lean forward. You give yourself to it. Meanwhile, the rhythm walked with us into school. We started telling stories in sitcom cadence. Pause, look, punch. Then we'd wait for a response that never came because our lives didn't have sound engineers. Still, the habit stuck. Even our teachers played along sometimes, dropping a dry line and letting the room fill the silence. We'd supply the missing track with our own nervous giggles. Get this. On the rare week the track broke, everything felt meaner. The same line suddenly had teeth. A sarcastic quip didn't bounce, it cut. You could hear the scrape of a chair, a cough, the flubbed rhythm of a live human moment without synthetic laughter to pad it. The joke's edges showed. I remember an episode like that, and the quiet was so loud the set seemed to squeak. Here's where it gets interesting. Live audience shows had a different electricity. You could feel the danger, laughter that crested and dipped, timing that flexed to real people's breath. Mistakes turned to jazz. The actors surfed something alive. When a joke died, it stayed dead, and the next line had to do the rescue work. That honesty made even the silly stuff feel legitimate. But most nights, the machine ran the room. Producers layered laugh types like spices. A light titter here, a big belly roar there. The sweetening applause at the end of a scene as if we'd witnessed something extraordinary when really someone just closed a door. It felt good, familiar. It gave small things a bigness we craved. Think about how that trains empathy. If a character insults someone and the laugh pours in, your body associates insult with relief. If the laugh comes after a pratfall, pain becomes confetti. Our instincts didn't vanish, they just learned to wait for the signal. Over time, we grew fluent in a language that told us what each silence was for. There's a micro story here. A mid-season episode lost its sweetener in syndication, maybe a transfer error. The beats kept yawning open, waiting for a laugh that never arrived. The actors stood in those gaps like people waiting for a bus. In the dead air, the jokes sagged. The meanness rose, and the audience at home, us, heard what the track usually drowned, the insecurity of the writing, the ache under the smirk. And yet I loved that clockwork comfort. The laugh track tucked you in. It turned the living room into a club where you never had to be clever to belong. If you timed your grin with the roar, you were part of it. That matters, especially when the world outside felt like sirens and gas lines and grown-ups arguing in low voices about mortgages. The thing is, the track also trained timing into us like scales on a piano. Later, in real conversations, we'd build to a line and leave a breath, hoping for a chuckle. Sometimes it came. Sometimes we were just two people blinking at each other, waiting for applause that never lived outside the box. I can still hear the varieties, the friendly chuckle, the someone just did a double take, the we're closing the act ovation. I didn't know what a laugh sweetener was, but I could feel when they ladled on the extra sugar. You didn't need a conspiracy to explain it. You needed a production schedule and a country full of tired people who wanted to be told everything was fine. The machine obliged, and when the laughter cut out, you could hear the cardboard in the sets. The third ugly truth was cheap sets, big dreams, invisible tape. And when the laughter cut out, you could hear the cardboard in the sets. That's not an insult, that's a memory. The rooms we lived with every week were made of plywood, paint, and hustle. You could see the seams if you knew where to look, and once you saw them, you couldn't stop seeing them. The stakes were simple, budgets were tight, schedules were tighter, and our need to escape was tightest of all. If a wall wobbled when a character slammed a door, fine, don't slam it again. If a window showed a painted skyline with one star brighter than the others, we called it romantic. We wanted dreams, and dreams could be painted. Action looked like this: day for night shots that turned a sunny Los Angeles afternoon into midnight with a filter and a prayer. A desert planet built from foam rocks and a smoke machine. A New York street that was the same backlot alley dressed with a different newspaper box. The camera didn't linger. It darted, keep the shot moving, and the audience fills in the rest. I kept a private game. Spot the traveling ficus. That same rubber plant showed up in 3 apartments across 2 networks, and I felt oddly protective of it, like a neighbor who never said hello but watered your lawn. Props weren't just reused, they had careers. A briefcase did courtroom duty on Thursday, then moonlighted as a spy's attaché on Friday. We didn't mind, we liked recognizing old friends. Meanwhile, crews pulled miracles with tape and coffee. You could catch a boom mic kissing the top of the frame, then vanishing like a guilty thought. My dad would chuckle, "They're moving fast, kid," and he was right. A week to write it, block it, light it, shoot it, cut it, glue, gaff tape, and adrenaline. You'd try building a world by Tuesday. Here's where it gets tender. Those cheap sets invited us to participate. The wobble asked for our balance. The painted backdrop asked for our sky. When a door didn't quite latch, we heard it say, "Pretend with me," and we did. You don't get that with perfection, you get that with almost. There were honest mistakes that turned charming. A glass window reflected a camera lens for a breath. A wall panel boomed when an actor leaned wrong. A telephone with no cord got dialed anyway, and we all decided it rang. The trick wasn't hiding the flaws, it was outrunning them with momentum. Day for night was my favorite magician's lie. A blue wash over palm trees, a cricket loop, and suddenly 2 characters whispered like it was 2 a.m. We believed because we wanted to share their secret, never mind the hard shadows under their feet. The story was the moonlight. And then there were the recycled plots, physical cousins, the recycled sets. You'd see a living room redecorated into a new family's house. Same mantle, different photo frames. That repetition stitched the networks together. Thursday night felt like Tuesday night's cousin. It gave the decade a house style, and we lived in it gladly. I remember Saturday Night Promise, a special stunt episode with a car crash in a tiny studio lot. Sparks flew like 4th of July. But if you paused it in your head, you saw the ramp, the hidden mattress, the waiting paramedic just off camera. The magic wasn't that it looked real, the magic was that it worked on us anyway. Here's the complication. For all the tape and tins, Saturday night TV could still goose your heart. A lighting cue landed right. An actor found a moment, and the set stopped being a set. Even the fake bricks seemed to breathe. That's the part people forget. The craft wasn't just money, it was timing, it was hands, it was drive. And when the show faded to credits, I'd glance at the plant and think, "See you next week, friend," because the stories themselves were about to get stranger than the scenery. Ugly truth number 4, bizarre plot lines and tone whiplash. But the stories themselves got stranger than the scenery. The decade ran on a roller coaster that didn't warn you about the drops. One week was hijinks, the next you were holding your breath while a character learned a lesson so heavy it bent the laugh track out of shape. As kids, we didn't have seatbelts for that. The stakes were our nerves. We learned to brace for pie-in-the-face comedy that could at any moment turn into a sermon about grief, addiction, or a dark corner the networks barely dared to name. Whiplash doesn't just strain your neck, it trains your heart to expect impact right after joy. Here's how the ride worked. Monday might give you a body swap. Dad wakes up in the kid's body, hijinks ensue, careers and report cards hang in the balance, and somewhere in there a dog drives a car. Tuesday might hand out amnesia cures, bonk on the head. Memory gone, bonk again, memory back. Nobody calls a doctor, and we call it closure. By Thursday, a chimp solves crimes. I'm not kidding. A chimp with a badge outsmarting crooks who somehow lose to a banana peel. You laughed, then you blinked, then you shrugged because the credits rolled. Then came the very special episode. The same show that made a running gag out of sneaking out at night would pull the emergency brake and stare directly into the camera. The studio lights seem brighter, the laughs thinner, the ending heavier. A character drinks too much or a friend doesn't come back, and the music stops winking. The message arrives with a solemnity the set can barely hold. I still remember a quiet turn. We just watched a custard pie meet a manager's face, big laugh, triumphant run to the kitchen. Next scene, the clown archetype sits on a bed crying. No gag can follow that. Our living room turned still as church. My father shifted in his chair. My mother folded her hands. The show was asking us to treat clowns like people. We did for 12 minutes. Meanwhile, the weekly lunacy marched on. Spaceships that clearly looked like spray-painted dinner plates were piloted by officers who solved diplomacy with a karate chop, and we ate it up. A love triangle unraveled because someone overheard half a sentence behind a door that never latched. A courtroom episode wrapped in 22 minutes with a confessional monologue that would get thrown out before the first commercial. You weren't supposed to analyze it, you were supposed to feel it and move on. What nobody knew at the time, or maybe we did and didn't say it, was how that rhythm trained us to metabolize contradiction. Laugh, learn, forget, repeat. If the pie scene and the weeping scene can sit side by side, then your own life's extremes can too. Comedy became the sugar that made the bitter go down, and sometimes the sugar itself gave you a headache. There were bright, careful pivots that earned their weight. A grounded show would seed the lesson early with looks instead of lectures, letting humor carry you close to the edge before switching to quiet. Those episodes still hold up because they respected cause and effect. The joke didn't erase the harm, it framed it. When consequences landed, they didn't bounce. But plenty of plots treated consequence like set dressing. You'd see a car chase that turned a city block into a pinball table. Nobody gets hurt. The hero tosses a one-liner, and we all agree physics has the night off. Then, a week later, that same hero delivers a speech about responsibility. It wasn't hypocrisy, it was scheduling. Here's a micro story. A sitcom devoted a whole week to a pet goldfish's funeral. We laughed at the tiny shoebox, the solemn procession past that traveling ficus, the eulogy ruined by hiccups. 2 scenes later, a neighbor confesses to a real loss. The room goes quiet. The camera moves in slowly, and you realize the shoebox was a rehearsal for something you actually recognize. For once, the lesson stuck. And yet the decade loved a gimmick. Dream episodes that rewrote reality for a night. Snow inside the living room, time travel via a grandfather clock. A doppelganger with an evil mustache. The next week, nobody mentions it. Reset culture kept advertisers happy and made syndication simple. If every story ended right where it began, you could jump in anywhere. Which brings us to the heart of the matter. Tone whiplash wasn't only sloppy, it was also a survival tactic. Writers smuggled truth past the guards by wrapping it in a banana peel. Audiences accepted heavy themes because they arrived in familiar packaging. The whiplash was the toll we paid to cross the bridge. I learned to trust the shows that slowed down, when the character didn't crack a joke after a gut punch, when the music held a minor note, when the scene took an extra breath. You knew someone in the room cared more about the person than the punchline. Those moments were scarce, and they mattered. Sometimes the weirdest thing wasn't the plot, it was the worldview. Ugly truth number 5, stereotypes as shortcuts, ethnic, class, queer coding. Sometimes the weirdest thing wasn't the plot, it was the worldview. The shows built shortcuts for laughs, and those shortcuts ran straight through people's identities. Accents became punchlines, neighborhoods became warnings. If a man didn't fit the era's idea of man, the script lit him with a wink and waited for the laugh track to bless the moment. That's a cheap map to a complicated country, and we grew up using it. The stakes were simple and heavy. When a character walked in with a certain cadence or a certain hat, we already knew the joke before the scene started. Kids learn fast, and television is a great teacher when it has a lazy lesson plan. We learned caricature before we learned names. At the dinner table, you hear your uncle do the voice. At school, it turns into a chorus. Action looked like this. The foreign neighbor knocks, says something mangled for the camera, and the studio laughs like language is a party trick. The waiter with the rolling R's mishears the order. The gag repeats until the credits. A sassy best friend arrives to deliver zingers and disappear when the real plot needs privacy. That's class coded. 2, the cab driver is comic relief. The maid is magic when she cleans messes nobody else can face. Every job came with a script. Queer coding lived in the margins. A character is confirmed bachelor, tidy, theatrical, swishy enough to signal difference, safe to giggle at, too foggy to confront. The wink kept standards and practices happy and left the rest of us to fill in blanks with bad crayons. If he gets a partner for a scene, it's coded as a joke or a disguise. Then the reset button wipes it away next week. My buddy brought a line to school, did the voice, and the class howled. I watched our teacher's face fall. No speech, no scolding, just the quiet disappointment that hangs heavier than detention. That landed, not enough to stop the next echo, but enough to leave a mark. Race wasn't the only shorthand. Class jokes came wrapped in laugh track approval. The rich guy is clueless. The poor guy is crafty, but never promoted. A family from the wrong side of town gets staged with louder costumes, louder music, louder everything, as if volume itself explained the difference. We were learning geography by stereotype. This block equals trouble, that accent equals punchline, that haircut equals threat or buffoon. Meanwhile, the writers cash the check called relatability. If a mixed group shows up, the center stays familiar, and anyone outside that center is either a lesson or a laugh. The lesson episodes lined good intentions up like tin soldiers. The laugh episodes dressed caricature and glitter and told us it was okay because the character got a zinger. It felt like progress in real time. In hindsight, it feels like a hallway we got stuck in. There were glimmers of reversal. A rare week would flip the script and count the cost of the joke. A character who's usually a punchline gets a monologue. The camera stops asking for a laugh and asks for a look. The audience claps because it knows sincerity when it hears it, even if the show hasn't earned it most nights. Those episodes felt like rain in August, welcome, brief, and not enough to end the drought. Here's the micro story my mother gave me. The foreign neighbor gag hits. The track swallows the room, and she just mutters, "Not nice." Low enough to be almost private. The machine keeps laughing, but the two words stick around after the credits. Sometimes that was all the counter-programming we got, a whispered correction at home. Then there were code words everybody used. Urban meant danger, ethnic meant spice, not person, flamboyant meant target. The newsroom scenes wrote community relations when they meant we're scared to say the thing out loud. My dad would say, "They're not allowed to say it," and I'd hear the silence louder than any punchline. So we learned to read between lines the way you learn to read lips in a loud bar. I'm not letting myself off the hook. I repeated the voices. I thought I was doing TV, not people. It took years to hear the difference in my own mouth. The laugh track's approval felt like permission. That's the danger of shortcuts. They save time and waste empathy. There were shows that tried a braver map. They brought in characters who didn't flatten. They let a coded side character own a scene without apology. They admitted class, faith, migration, and the closet without turning any of them into props. The joke didn't lean on the identity. It leaned on the situation. You knew it when you saw it because the laugh felt earned, not stolen. But most nights, the machine demanded calibration. If the audience hesitated, the sweetener poured heavier. If a stereotype killed, it got promoted to series regular. Ratings aren't moral, they're a mirror tilted toward habit, and habit is hard to fire. A last micro scene. Thanksgiving episode, big table, the sassy friend cracks a line about the host cooking, the room laughs. And then, small miracle, the host hands over the ladle and says, "Then you cook." The friend cooks. It's good. The laugh turns into a cheer. That's not a revolution, but it's a door cracked open. And yet the shows that tried to be brave met a different wall, fear in the living room. The sixth ugly truth, censorship standards and the stuff we never saw. And yet the shows that tried to be brave met a different wall, fear in the living room. I don't mean pitchfork outrage. I mean the quiet fear that made a dad change the channel when a scene got too honest. Standards and practices had a clipboard full of those fears. They weren't villains, they were hall monitors for a country that argued with itself during commercial breaks. The stakes were sharper than we admitted. Gatekeepers shaved off jagged edges, and we grew up on rounded corners. When you never see something named, you start thinking it doesn't exist or that it's too shameful to say out loud. That silence taught us a second language, suggestion. Here's how the machine worked. A script would show up with heat in it, anger, sex, politics, the whole ugly truth, and the network notes arrived like snow, soft and smothering. Could the argument be less angry? Could the kiss cut sooner? Could the slur turn into a wink? Could the problem be an accident so nobody's to blame? Smoothing wasn't just taste, it was policy. You heard it in the dialogue that tiptoed, euphemisms stacked like cardboard boxes, trouble, lifestyle, urban problems, a difficult situation at home. The audience understood, but the message was a blur. It trained us to talk around pain, to code it so completely you couldn't taste it anymore. When my dad said, "They're not allowed to say it," the sentence rang louder than the laugh track that followed. Micro story, a serious installment tried to face a real harm. By airtime, the cause had turned into a freak mishap. No one meant it. No one chose it, therefore no one had to apologize. The lesson rolled credits without naming the wound. You could feel the relief, like a long exhale that dodged the cough. Meanwhile, satire kept its head down. Jokes wore disguises. A crooked city became a small-town council. A war turned into a paintball game. The bigot morphed into a crank who didn't mean it. The writers did algebra to sneak meaning past the guards. Sometimes the math landed, elegant and sly. Sometimes it came out toothless, a smile that didn't bite. The fear lived in living rooms, too. A brave show would push, and phones lit up at the station. Letters, carefully typed, folded with righteousness, arrived by the sack. Sponsors hated heat. Heat made people switch to the other network. So a story that should have cracked open stayed shut with a moral of the week bow on top. Neat, tidy, forgettable. But there were smugglers. A line slipped through with double meaning. A scene played longer than the note demanded. An actor held a look one beat past safe. Those beats were contraband, and when you caught them, your heart jumped like you'd found a secret door. The show couldn't say it, but it said enough. Here's where it gets complicated. Censors also forced invention. If you can't show the thing, you have to build the feeling. That's craft. A hand trembles instead of a slur being spoken. A camera holds on the listener instead of the blow. You learn to read faces like subtitles. We got better at empathy even while the language stayed stunted. Still, the cost shows in what we never saw. Women wanting careers without punishment, rare. Men talking about tenderness without a joke, escape hatch. Rarer. Joy that didn't come wrapped in permission, almost non-existent. So we learned that approval came first, truth second. A nightly ritual formed, a heavy subject gets framed as nobody's fault, a hug lands, and a bumper promises next week's goofy plot. Reset saves the sponsor, the station, and your nerves. The lesson is to move along. Don't dwell. Don't demand names. Take the feeling. Skip the fact. My father would glance over during one of those careful scenes and whisper, "They're hinting," like he was proud of them for trying. My mother would answer, "Say it," like she was tired of the hint. That was our house debate distilled, the art of the workaround versus the need for the word. And yet sometimes truth slipped, laughing, past the guard, a punchline that landed wrong and stayed in the air. A character who didn't reset after the credits, a moment that said, "I won't be smooth." Those were the nights you sat up straighter. Even heroes weren't spared. Their halos came with fine print. Ugly truth number 7. Role models with double standards. Violence, drinking, laughing it off. Even heroes weren't spared. Their halos came with fine print. TV dads poured a drink as a reset button, clinked ice, and called it wisdom. Cops bent rules with a wink, kicked a door, tossed a quip, and tucked the Constitution back in the glove box. We learned charm could sandpaper consequence smooth. The stakes were our inner compass. When a bar became a confessional, bad choices got baptized in punchlines. A belt swung as a joke. Nervous laughter as absolution. Car chases, shredded streets, no paperwork, no trauma, just freeze frames and theme music. I asked my father for a teachable moment. He didn't blink. "That's TV. Song," he said, and turned the dial. The message was simple. Admire the result, ignore the cost. It felt normal. Micro story, the week a hero drove after just one. No crash, no lecture, just home by tag music. Our living room went quiet like someone cracked the window in January. We felt the cold anyway. To be fair, some shows grew up, the bottle got named, the badge got checked, the apology took more than a hug. An arc carried forward past the reset. You felt the breath get heavier and it mattered. So why do we still love it? Because the flaws lived alongside the heart, and we kept waiting for the better self to walk in. Through line, why we watched anyway, emotional core. Now, after all that, you might ask, why did we keep showing up? Because that box in the corner was our nightly campfire. 3 channels, 1 ritual. You parked your plate on a TV tray, found your groove on the couch, and let the glow pull the day's splinters out. The stakes weren't abstract, they were family. The show didn't just entertain, it synchronized us. We laughed in unison, which, for a house with different tempers and different truths, meant something. That rhythm stitched us together. You know what I mean. The world outside felt loud. Sirens, strikes, headlines that made the adults speak in code. Inside, the show offered a language we could all share. Catchphrases became currency. You could answer a hard moment with a borrowed line, light as a wink, and nobody had to admit they were scared. I can still hear my mother's laugh at the corny gag she'd pretend to hate. That first little burst of air, then the hand to the mouth. Embarrassed by joy, my father didn't laugh like that. He nodded at the rare, hard truth and let his eyes say the rest. Between them, I learned 2 dialects of love, the release and the restraint. The characters felt like neighbors, not heroes, not saints, just folks who ate dinner, messed up, fixed it by the flip of the credits. We knew their couches, their kitchens, the way their doors stuck. That familiarity mattered. When the world changes, every headline, a familiar door is a blessing. And then the micro miracles. A power outage one winter turned the house into a quiet tent. Radio hissed to life. And we took turns telling episodes from memory. We didn't argue about accuracy, we argued about cadence. The rhythm mattered more than the plot. When the lights came back, something lingered, like we'd rebuilt the set with our voices and found we liked our version better. Here's the thing, for all the cardboard and canned laughs, the shows taught timing, not just for jokes, but for grace. Leave a beat after an apology. Hold the room when someone risks honesty. If you grew up with those living room pauses, you learned how to talk without breaking the spell. They taught tenderness too, even when they tried to dodge it. A hand on a shoulder that stayed 1 second longer than the music expected. A look that said, "I'm sorry," when the script said, "Let's move on." We learned to notice the unsaid, useful skill in life. And yes, they taught us how to argue kindly. The best scenes didn't win fights. They landed planes. You end at almost agreement, pour coffee, reset the room. My house adopted that choreography. The debate could burn, the cleanup was always shared. 2 people wiping the same counter is a truce you can taste. Shared culture is no small thing. On Friday at school or work, you didn't need introductions. You just said the line. The room laughed because they were there last night too. For a country spread out and pulled apart, that was a bridge you could cross in sneakers. We watched because it was easy. We watched because it was ours. We watched because even flawed stories can carry a lot of warmth when everyone's sitting close. And somewhere inside the flaws, you could sense the better version trying to get out. Writers tucking truth between the beats, actors slipping care through the cracks, crews building magic out of tape and time. So when I think of those nights, I don't just hear the wrong notes, I hear the chorus we made together. Forks clinked, a joke landed, a sigh answered. The credits rolled, the set went dark, but the room felt lit from inside. With all that on the table, it's time to land the plane. Those shows were clumsy and kind, cruel and cozy, and they raised us by teaching both what to keep and what to outgrow. If any of this stirred a memory, pull up a chair on this porch of mine, tap subscribe, ring the bell if you'd like, and bring someone who remembers. Next time we'll see how the 80s rewired the formula and sold us bigger dreams with sharper edges.